morning, everybody. March 27th, 2018, 6:25 a.m. We are officially 65 days, 17 hours, 36 minutes, and 19 seconds away from the 2018 Atlantic hurricane season. There's a reason I'm telling you this. We have some pretty cool-looking anomalies going on in the Atlantic Ocean after a storm that just passed over the Great Lakes, and the Northeast whips into the ocean and shows us a little preview of what we're going to be seeing in the Atlantic Ocean very shortly. You are looking at current temperatures right now. This morning we have a little bit of a heat wave, more so dry air down in the south, but it's also a big system of moisture that is just flooding. About 22 million people are under flood watch as we speak. This is starting in Texas. You can see here in the yellow, this is currently where those watches are. We have about just over 8.5 million people between Dallas, Austin, Plano, Garland, and Irving, Texas, in this strip right here. And all this is going to do is move up into the Northeast. Now, this was part of what would have been that nor'easter we were talking about on Easter Sunday, which is still, we might be looking at a decent amount of snow for areas of New York, parts of Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine, the northeast, while everything underneath Pennsylvania, Jersey, Delaware, Gap, West Virginia, and Virginia actually will be dealing with rain more than likely on Easter Sunday, which just kind of, you know, sucks, but what are you going to do? So here is our moisture system right now. This is our last frame, so we are going to backtrack and we're going to take a look at where this is originating from. And you can see this is being pulled all the way from the Pacific Ocean over the Baja region, and then it is turning into bigger storms as we get towards the center of the U.S. Now, you can see here the west sides of Texas are where this began. We did have some significant rainfall. We had hail in I think it was Throckmorton, Texas. There was golf ball size hail falling. They were showing some video of it on the Weather Channel. We're also talking about some earthquakes here today, guys, because Papua New Guinea is just getting slammed again. 7.0 earthquake. A lot of readings said 6.8. The official downgrade was 6.6, but I never trust that. I go by the first readings, which was a 7.0 in the western islands of Papua New Guinea. Which is never good for the U.S., excuse me, and I'm going to explain why in a second, but first we're going to look at this. I want you to take a look out here in the Atlantic Ocean as we move forward with these frames here. Check out that spin going on there. We're going to look at that at Tropical Tidbits too, but that is taking on the shape of what we like to call hurricanes here in the Atlantic Ocean. And I just thought it was very interesting to see that there, and it was also a front that came right off the edge, the northern side of Florida, through Georgia and the Carolinas, and then that's what came out into the ocean. There was actually some of the private weather channels I follow calling it the first tropical storm of the season, but I mean, of course, it wasn't named anything, but it did drop a lot of pressure right in this area and then kind of moved out here, and you could see it flare up on Tropical Tidbits, and it really mimics one of those tropical storms and hurricanes we saw last year. Speaking of hurricanes, they have passed a new law in Florida after, this is a post-Irma law, which is going to protect the elderly. There were 14 deaths due to Irma, but not because of the hurricane itself. This was because of the power being knocked out and the heat. So 14 elderly people died of heat after losing power in Irma. If you remember, Irma was that hurricane that was a Cat 5, came through this gap here between Cuba and Florida, and before it went up into the west coast of Florida, everyone was saying it was going up the east coast. We kind of called this one going into the west. It rolled off of Cuba first and then died down to a 3 and then a 2 before it hit Naples, Florida, if you guys remember. So Irma was a pretty significant hurricane, could have been a lot worse. We would have no west coast of Florida had that thing not hit Cuba. So they passed a new law saying that all nursing houses and elderly people homes, I guess you can call them. I don't know the correct term. I hope that wasn't something wrong to say. I guess not. Anyway, they passed a new law saying that they must purchase massive generators that would power the whole building to keep air conditioners working, which I thought was interesting. We all know that Florida is just in that area where hurricanes either go this way or they go this way. That will always be the case, at least as long as we're on this earth, and it just seems to be getting worse. So this hurricane season is coming up fast. I believe April and May will be a significant start to that time period of our first tropical storms, possibly our first hurricane even though the season starts June 1st. But alright, there was a refresh. That's a good thing. Okay, so anyway, so this moisture system begins in Texas, and then you can see it kind of explode there over Oklahoma. A lot of rainfall in Oklahoma. This thing is going to basically just flood the Mississippi River. We always talk about this. Mississippi River tends to flood. We are dealing with spring. We are getting into a tornado season, so we are getting these spring storms that we are now going to be switching from winter storm stories into these spring rain, wind, tornado season. It's going to be busy. May being the most active month. I believe there was 282 tornadoes last year in the month of May. And we already had some big flare-ups in February, and we may be looking at a flare-up coming up. So we're going to take a look at some of that stuff. This is an accumulation chart over the next couple days. You can see these deep reds. We have Louisiana, Arkansas, Missouri. This is Meemaw the Elf, for those of you that have trouble remembering state names. We have Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, and then we move down to Arkansas, Louisiana. We call that Meemaw the Elf because it looks like an elf. You got the nose, big belly, shoe, and there's that old dirty top hat. I just remember my teacher in school when I was in like 5th grade teaching me this. I never forgot it. So, but anyway, you can see these deep red colors, the purple, and even the outside purple colors. That is why 22 million people plus that will rise are under flood watch, and this is going to move all the way up into the northeast, which will then in turn be possibly the washout for Easter Sunday for those of us in the northeast, possibly snow in New York. That low pressure system that was out in the ocean that could have been nor'easter is now inland more, so it may not be a nor'easter, but certainly going to be not the weather we want for an Easter Sunday when you're supposed to be outside hunting for eggs and stuff of that nature. At least that's what I used to do as a kid. I can't remember the last time I went out looking for eggs. But anyway, so let's check this out one more time. We have the system blowing up over Oklahoma, you can see right here, and then it moves into Arkansas, Missouri, and that will in turn move into Kentucky, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, River Valley, and then up into the northeast. So this is why we are dealing with this massive moisture. Anytime you see these green colors when you are on the lower level water vapor chart, that is what you need to look out for. So a lot of flooding going on. There has been a lot of lightning with this storm too. They had a story on the Weather Channel yesterday with this guy who's been struck by lightning 12 times. They're calling him the human lightning magnet. Very interesting story. I might do a separate video on it, but this is our mimic chart, guys. If you remember last year, we looked at this almost every day, watching these waves come off of the western coast of Africa and moving in towards our western water belt that brings these hurricanes into the Gulf or into the Atlantic Ocean up into the northeast. Now just check out this spin here. This is what we were looking at on the other chart. It comes right off the coast of Florida and then whoosh. That is exactly what we look for with our tropical storms and hurricanes, and it is moving in a counterclockwise motion. Anything in the northern hemisphere, counterclockwise storms, that's why we call them hurricanes. Then we have typhoons and cyclones, all the same thing, just different parts of the world. Alright, let's check this out on Tropical Tidbits, and we will see where this severe weather is going to be. You can see how it begins in Texas. We got those yellows, and then that is where we need to watch out for tornadoes and also those hail warnings. Like I said, in that Throckmorton area of Texas, golf ball size hail, that will move into Louisiana and Arkansas, and then possibly that hail situation will be in the western areas of Tennessee and Kentucky as well. As we move forward into the 29th, you can see how this system moves all the way up into the northeast. This is that low pressure system that was out in the ocean that was causing the warnings for the nor'easter on Easter, but now we're looking at more of a rain event. But you can see as it pulls out, it brings some of that snow down into the areas of New York for the 31st, and then by the 1st, we have a separate system that is moving over New York, and then we'll bring possible snow over the Great Lakes. So that's what we're looking out for here. Here is Easter Sunday, a mix of snow, northeast Pennsylvania and New York. The low pressure is a little bit out farther, so that's going to be a bit of a windy day as well. So northeast, we're going to be preparing for kind of a crappy Easter. What are you going to do? Can't control the weather. Haha, some of you are going to leave some comments about that, I'm sure. Anyway, let's take a look at this thing again. Check that out. That is 988 pressure. That looks just like the beginnings of a hurricane. So, just a little preview of what's to come. We're not going to get, well, we don't usually get many hurricanes that come up in this area, but you know what? It's always possible. If you guys remember, Hurricane Jose sat out here for like 14 days. Just mixing up the coast here, causing waves, and it just would not go away. That was one of the longer hurricanes we had all season. It didn't do much damage, but it was one of the longer lasting ones. If you guys remember, we broke record after record last year. Now, let's talk about something else here. Papua New Guinea, 7.0 earthquake, and I'm calling it a 7.0 because that is what we have seen on our buoy charts. Now, here is a chart that I use on my tablet, which is where I get most of my earthquake warnings at. So if you guys remember, we had, actually let's scroll down this way. We had that 7.5 to 7.8 earthquake that hit Papua New Guinea, and then after that we had, let's check it out, we had 42 aftershock earthquakes. Okay, so here was the 7.5 right here. This was the initial earthquake, and then there was this 5.6, I believe it was, right underneath it, and then over the next 48 hours there was well over 35 to 40 earthquake aftershocks, including 6.0s involved in that in Papua New Guinea. Now, I had somebody email me that is actually from Papua New Guinea that went around the island and took pictures of the damage. Now, apparently the damage was a lot worse than what they reported on the news. The death toll was a lot worse than what they reported on the news. So I'm waiting for those exclusive pictures to bring to you guys. He has given me permission to use them. I'm just waiting for an answer, basically, from the email. We finally exchanged emails. He's going to send me some pictures that he took. So I'm very interested in that. That was at 7.5 back on, I believe, was that early March or was that February? Yeah, that was February 25th is when that earthquake took place. So anyway, after that, we also had a 7.0 on the 8th, which was the Papua New Guinea region. A lot of those were saying 6.3, 6.4, but look at all these 7s. That was a 7.0 earthquake. It was downgraded. They like to do that to keep the average down. Those of you can, read into that a little more if you want to. I'm not going to debate that, but I'm going by what I see with my own eyes. Once again, Papua New Guinea 6.8, 6.8, 6.8, 6.8, 6.8, and 7.0. This was the first one that popped up, so I'm calling it a 7. This is 6 miles in depth, which was very, very shallow. Now, the only difference with this is that it was in a different part of Papua New Guinea. Sorry about that. Let's see here. Here we go. So this is the area where these two massive earthquakes took place, was in a different part of Papua New Guinea. If you remember, that 7.5 was right here, still getting movement here. There's a lot of movement here constantly, but ever since that 7.5, this area has just been decimated with earthquakes. As one goes off right now, 4.8 south of the Fiji Islands. All right, pretty significant. How deep? Doesn't say. Alright, so anyway, these are the two earthquakes we're looking at now. And guys, the reason I talk about Papua New Guinea so much is not because to single them out, but if you notice, whenever we get tsunami warnings, tsunamis can move across the entire ocean. Papua New Guinea happens to be in an area that if there were a tsunami, we have Hawaii and then the west coast of the U.S. in the exact path of it. If there ever was a tsunami, that wave would bow and bow and bow and bow and get stronger and stronger as it moves across the ocean. So Papua New Guinea is a very significant area for us to watch as far as earthquakes go. We also had a very significant earthquake right here, the South Indian Ridge. This was called a 6.3, but on the charts it was registered as a 6.8 at first. So they downgrade the earthquakes, I guess to keep the average low. I'm not exactly sure why they do it. Again, there are other channels that dive into that stuff a lot more than I do. But a lot of significant movement in Papua New Guinea, definitely causing damage. Let's see here. They're calling it a 6.6, 10 miles from Pomino. Pomio, I'm sorry. And then here are the latest quakes from Papua New Guinea as early as yesterday. 4.6, 4.6, 5.3, 4.6, 4.7, and then we move into that 6.3 that happened, which was right next to this one. And that's all they're showing for this. But this was a 7.0 earthquake. There's no doubt about it. That's what popped up on my chart. And how deep was this one? Let's see. 6 miles deep. So you can guarantee there was definitely damage from this earthquake. In fact, I think I had an article pulled up. Let's see if we can find some articles. There we go, right here. 6.6 earthquake strikes Papua New Guinea. This was 22 hours ago. Alright, well, these are huts, so of course they're going to get damaged. Alright, so for those of you that want to check out this earthquake, I don't want to deal with the copyright issues with YouTube these days. Papua New Guinea hit by 6.6 earthquake. I don't know why they just showed a volcano. Did this thing set a volcano off? Okay, so they're just talking about the Ring of Fire as a whole. Basically, for those of you that don't know, the Ring of Fire is basically the entire Pacific Ocean. Let me zoom in a little here. This is the Ring of Fire right here because of all the volcanoes that are in this area. So they call it the Ring of Fire. Lots of volcanoes near Papua New Guinea. We've talked about this in the past. And this is our buoy center. No buoys are going off currently. I believe one went off during that 6.3. They're saying the other day, if you notice, these 3 buoys are out of commission right now, the ones that would actually register, possibly this one too. These buoys get set off whenever there's a change in water, the rise in the water waves, up to a millimeter. Like, these things are very sensitive, so anytime you see these going off, you want to check that area. You can check these individual buoys by clicking on them. You can view details, and then it opens up like pictures of the buoys, the current wave depth. It gives you all sorts of cool information that you can check out for those of you that are interested in it. I believe that is it for today, not for today, at least for this video. Again, 22 million people under flood watch. This thing is ripping its way up into the northeast. So basically every state, Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Tennessee, Kentucky, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, West Virginia, Virginia, Pennsylvania, New York. Guess what? We got a lot of rain coming, and then possibly snow on Easter Sunday, and then we have a little bit of a preview of what is to come in the Atlantic Ocean in 65 days, more than likely sooner. Alright guys, sorry if I was all over the place today, had to catch up. Oh yeah, there was some, Eastern Europe had some red snow fall to the ground, and they were saying it looked like Mars, but I guess they explained it as when there is a snowstorm and there is dust in the air or some sand storm from another part of the world moving into that area, it mixes with the snow and it falls down. It looks like Mars. They had a bunch of explanations of why it happened. Who knows why it happened? It was cool. So if you guys want to Google that, just Google red snow Eastern Europe and you'll see some cool, another earthquake, 2.3 Central Alaska. You'll see some cool images of literally pictures that look like Mars because the snow has this weird red color to it. Apparently it happens a lot in Colorado. I haven't heard of it, but those of you that live in Colorado, maybe you can verify that. Anyway, guys, I hope you have a great morning. Another forecast coming up this afternoon once I get out of work. But again, 22 million under flood watch, a lot of lightning, a lot of hail. Be prepared, everyone up the Ohio River Valley and along the Mississippi River. Thanks for listening, guys. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.